Okay, so over the past few months, I finally read through The Lord of the Rings, which is interesting because it's three books, but it's actually six books, but it's actually one book. Because one thing I think is super neat is the pages between each book. Like when you get to Two Towers, it doesn't start off on page one. It continues on page, I'm going to make up a number, like 334, like something like that. And I think that's neat. So it makes everything feel like it is meant to be read as one book, but each book is divided into two halves. Like here's book one, which I'm going to try to do this from memory because I actually didn't write this down. I think the first book ends when Frodo gets to Rivendell. The second book ends like with Frodo and Sam leaving the rest of the party. Not quite with Boromir's death. That's technically at the start of Two Towers. And then Two Towers book one is everything with Aragorn's party and Merry and Pippin's party. And that ends. Where exactly does that end? Because Helm's Deep happens and they go and confront Saruman. Because that in the films is in Return of the King, but the pacing is a bit different here. But I think it does end at Isengard. And Two Towers ends after Shelob, with Frodo being captured and Sam trying to rescue him. And the first book in Return of the King, so that's book 5, is again like everything with Aragorn and Merry and Pippin. And that ends with like the scene with the mouth of Sauron and then charging the gate. The next half of the book is maybe 3 chapters of Frodo and Sam before they get the ring in Mount Doom, and then just all of the endings of Return of the King, plus like the Scouring of the Shire. But the book and the films end with the same scene of Frodo going to the Grey Haven, saying goodbye to his Hobbit friends, Sam going back to his family, with the last line of dialogue in the film being the last line of the book, which is, well, I'm back. And I did celebrate finishing the books by binging the extended editions back to back to back. Functionally, I spent a day, maybe 2 weeks ago, watching a 12-hour movie, or like 11 and a half, 11:45, functionally a 12-hour movie. So what I want to do is kind of give my thoughts on the books, give my thoughts on the films, and then just kind of go over a lot of the differences I've noticed, but in different categories. Like, here's some of the differences. Like, here's some of the things the movie did different that I prefer. Here's some of the things the movie did different that I understand. I don't necessarily prefer them. Maybe I don't actively dislike them, but I'm like, I understand this. I'm all right with this. And then here's the things that I just really didn't like. But starting off, yeah, I loved the books. What do you know? One of the greatest works of fiction of all time actually holds up to that title after all these decades. For me, a lot of that comes from Tolkien's prose. I just really loved the way he would describe things, and I don't have specific I don't have the actual lines written down, but I wrote some examples that I remember really enjoying, which is like the description of the Balrog as like this great shadowy creature. Basically everything in Lothlorien. There is one bit where I'm paraphrasing a little, but I remember Frodo describes Rivendell felt like a place modeled after something ancient. Lothlorien feels like an ancient place. When Pippin is describing Treebeard's eyes and almost like the depths of his soul that you can just see through his eyes, there's this bit when they talk about how Frodo was laughing at something Sam said, and how, like, oh, laughter hadn't been heard here in such a long time that even the rocks were listening in. And it felt like less of a they're listening because, you know, they're spies of Sauron, although I mean it's Lord of the Rings, they could be. It almost seemed more of a, what the hell is that? I haven't heard this sound in so long. Just describing Shelob and what she is, because in the film it was like, oh, there's just a giant spider, and in the book, like, no, here is this great, like, physical manifestation of evil and darkness. It just chooses to look like a spider, and how Sauron refers to her as his pet. So it's like, I have no real control over Shelob. That's just a thing that exists here, but look, she takes care of business. Like, sometimes I'll just give her stuff to eat just to appease her. And like, I really enjoyed that. This isn't necessarily like, it's not narration prose, it's dialogue, but I really liked Denethor when he's describing bitterness and what that feels like. You have Faramir and his speeches to Eowyn about beauty and about grief. You've got so I'll get to my favorite line here in a second. You've got Sauron panicking when he realizes that they're at Mount Doom with the ring. It's really, really funny. The description of the Grey Havens, which does make it into the films. There's an added scene where Gandalf is talking to Pippin in Minas Tirith, where Pippin's like, I didn't think it would end like this. And he's like, well, this isn't the end. And what Gandalf says, it is like the way the Grey Havens are described, and it is genuinely one of my favorite bits of prose in the books. But then you've got my favorite line, which is of Sam Gamgee. His will was set, and only death would break it. And I freaking love that line. Like, that is so hype to me. That is so exciting. It's just like, this is Sam Gamgee's true name, aside from like being a gardener and whatnot. It's his will was set. Nothing is going to stop him now. He is going to make sure that Frodo does, like, the job is finished and he's looking after his boy. I loved it. And Tolkien's love of language also leads to a greater emphasis of song and poetry in the books. Although rewatching the films, I realized there is more added than I thought there was, but it didn't seem to have quite as much emphasis as in the book. One that particularly I particularly noted is after Boromir's death, like, Aragorn composes something on the spot, and I think Legolas chimed in as well. I don't think Gimli did. That was not in the film. That was one that I don't remember if I even put on my list, but that was something that really disappointed me, because I really loved the, like, dirge they had for Boromir. But in the book, basically everybody is like a warrior poet, and I just loved that. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was super cool. But something else I really want to talk about that I thought was really noticeable in the books is, I don't know if Tolkien was religious. Like, I know he was super close to C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis, I know, was very religious. But the books have this very Christian feel to me. The story of this savior who is carrying the burden of the world upon himself, and he endures torment and temptation, but he is able to go through with he's able to go through with his mission. And while it is successful, he ultimately has to leave this world for the one behind, he leaves this one for the world beyond, leaving his close friends behind, who in a sense have to kind of carry on his work, with Sam being left to finish the last few pages of the book, which is also in a meta sense. This is nothing new, the Christian nod, or Christian note, I guess. It was really heartwarming and heartbreaking at the same time, reading that bit where Frodo was telling Sam, the rest I'm leaving to you. And I think it even notes that, Sam had to go through a lot of Frodo's notes to be able to finish this last little chunk of the book. Because from my understanding, that's how the Silmarillion was written. Tolkien died, and his son kind of took up that mantle and looked through his father's notes to be able to finish that work. And just seeing that very unintentional parallel, I don't think that was something that Tolkien was trying to make happen, but like that unintentional parallel between the story and reality, I thought was really interesting. And like I said, it's heartbreaking, but it's heartwarming at the same time. Sorry, just trying to get back to my notes. I got a little distracted on that tangent. But, the Grey Havens themselves have this very heaven-like feel to me as an afterlife, but also with the way it's described, like this sense of paradise. The fact that Lord of the Rings is, to me, like, it's a story about good versus evil, but it is also a story about temptation. And we see that with the ring, quite obviously. We really see it with Pippin and the Palantir, because to me in the film, it just seemed like, I kind of want to know what this thing is. This thing seems really cool. I want to check it out. Yeah, I know I probably shouldn't, but I gotta do it. Oh no, this was not a good thing. The way it's described in the book, Pippin describes this, I said describes twice in like 5 words, but Pippin notes this compulsion and how I don't want to do this, And I know I shouldn't, but I have to. I know that Gandalf is going to be mad at me, and I know that I'm going to deserve it, but I just have to do this. It's like, that's how sin can very often feel. And I found that bit to be really, really interesting. That he succumbs to his desires against his better judgment. And then another character I noted with that is Theoden as well. With the way it's portrayed in the film, again, felt more like he's under some kind of direct curse from Grima, which is making him more old, it's making him withered and a bit more obstinate. Where in the book, I feel like there's still some degree of magic in there as well, but a lot of it just seemed like he's been listening to really, really bad advice, and the advice is like these sweet nothings being whispered into his ear, like, oh, king, you don't need to listen to them. You should listen to me. Everything's fine. You can just keep doing what you gotta do, but if anyone says anything against you, you gotta get rid of them. And that was something I noticed. And I feel like Sauron could definitely be a stand-in for the devil. You know, this is the enemy, this is the Dark Lord and all of that. But personally, I think Saruman fills that role a lot better. The idea of this fallen angel, because my understanding that's essentially what he and Gandalf are, is that this angel who's unsatisfied with his lot due to his pride, his disdain for others and like other lives, him again trying to use those sweet words to tempt people to his side, like especially in the book when they confront him at Isengard, and he's just kind of like whispering to people. I mean, he's not like he's at the top of the tower, but it very much felt like, hey man, I didn't mean it. We're cool. Come on, you can trust me. Like he's spinning his web right in front of Theoden, and it's kind of almost working. And then as soon as it doesn't work, because I do love that line, like, oh yeah, we'll have peace. Like when the crows are devouring you alive. Like, I love my boy Theoden King. Also, I just have to note, I love that he is very rarely referred to as King Theoden. It's Theoden King. And I can't describe why that works for me so well, but I love it. It's just so pleasing to the ear. But, like, it almost kind of works. So, and then when it doesn't, Saruman just immediately moves on in front of everybody in plain view and just tries to work to the next person. And it's so funny that it doesn't work. Like, I absolutely love it. But, yeah, he just ends up being this sore and petty loser. And, like I said, ultimately, this is a story about good versus evil, and it's a story about friendship. There's that line of, Frodo wouldn't have made it very far without Sam, and I'm going to be honest, that bit made me cry when I got to it in the book. It was the only bit that made me cry, and I was not expecting it. Like, I know that scene, it was just, I didn't think it was going to hit me the way it did, and I can't even articulate why. I just loved it, man. like I love stories that are about the power of friend. Like, I love Friendship is Magic, one of my favorite shows ever. Like, yeah, the power of friendship is an actual physical tangible thing. But then there's a story like this where it's not, Frodo and Sam can't fire a friendship rainbow to blast Gollum into Mount Doom, but it is the power of their bond that was able to keep them both going at times, and that's something I really, really enjoy. I will say, the books were not nearly as long as I thought they were going to be. Like, it's about, I'll also say, I feel like I didn't read the appendices, so I stopped a bit early, but I finished the main story, and in total, that was around 1,000 pages or so. So it's about 300 and some change per book. Again, it's one book, that's 3, that's 6. So each of the 3 books is about 300 pages-ish. So probably about 160, 170 for each of the 6 books, give or take. And that's not nearly as long as I thought it was going to be. I would highly recommend reading these books to anyone who hasn't, especially if you are also a fan of the films. Speaking of, I don't know why I did it like that. That was a weird gesture, but let's talk about the movies. So, a lot of what I said about the books and what I like about the books, I feel like is still in the movie. Not to the same extent, because I like with some of the Christian metaphors, I feel like I got it more from the prose than just from the actions, but it's still kind of there. I still get the good versus evil. I still get the temptation. I still get the power of friendship. Yeah, I'm sorry, now I'm looking at my notes. Yeah, the emphasis on Sam and Frodo's friendship, Frodo's messianic journey, the ring's temptation. There's not as much song and poetry as there is in the book, but I think there is still a good amount. There's just not as much focus on it. There is a greater emphasis on the battles, with Helm's Deep in particular being something that was a lot more fleshed out in the film than it was in the book, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Also in Two Towers, there's that battle against the wargs on the way to Helm's Deep, which was not in the book at all. That was completely made up, just so we'd have more fight scenes, I suppose. Some of the history from the books gets lost, like, for example, like talking about what Shelob is. To me, I just feel like the overall, like, aura of Lothlorien, or of Carteraz. Sorry, that bit is so fucking funny. So in the film, they're climbing a mountain, and then Saruman sees them and is, casting some magic to make this really bad blizzard, so they have to go back, and, it's something that makes Saruman feel like more of a threat. So I like that. I think it works. In the book, the mountain is sentient and just hates them, and the storm is the mountain literally trying to get them off its back. And it's so funny. And I feel like I wrote it down on my list. Like, this is one where I understand the change. I'm not gonna fight you on that. But reading that section of, the mountain's just a jerk, is so funny. And, like, the world building you get from that is awesome. I just loved it. But, another thing I have to say about the movies is parts of the characters get lost in translation. Like, Legolas is made out to be more stoic and quiet rather than his excitable self. Aragorn is going through this journey of discovery rather than someone who is just ready to be king. And as a result, I do lose one of my favorite lines, which I know I haven't seen the Bashki films. I've seen bits and pieces, but it's in the Bashki film when they're in the Prancing Pony, and which there's another line from the Prancing Pony I'll bring up in a second. But where I think Sam is like, I don't trust him, Frodo. We shouldn't do this, blah, blah, blah. And to which Aragorn says, if I wanted the ring, I could have it now. And I love that, because I know in the Bashki film he pulls out his sword. I think he does the same in the book as well. And you just feel the tension in that, and it's so cool. And in the Bashki film, it's John Hurt. And like, that line is so cool. It's leveraged so well. And we just don't get it. Because this is an Aragorn that is more afraid that he'll follow Isildur's footsteps and lose himself to that temptation. So it makes sense he wouldn't have that line, but man, the freaking aura in that line. Also, though, in the Prancing Pony, this is another line that got cut. And I'm like, okay, but it's fine that you're making Aragorn a little less mean. But when he's talking about the innkeeper, it's something along the lines of, we're dealing with a fat innkeeper who'd forget his name if it wasn't shouted to him all day. And then Frodo just kind of starts laughing to himself. It's so good. This is what I don't think I wrote down in my comparisons, but I thought about it while watching the film, is when Gandalf throws the ring into the fire. In the movie, I think Frodo just kind of watches it happen and is almost just kind of like, why'd you do that? In the book, Frodo has a much, bigger reaction. I think he almost, tries to put his hand in. And Gandalf calls him out on it, I thought you were saying this ring didn't matter that much to you, and you almost jumped into the fire for it. And I really, really like that bit. Let's see. Yeah, I talked about Aragorn, that line getting cut. We'll get to some others, we'll get to Gimli. But ultimately, yeah, I think the films are still a story about good versus evil. Our heroes going on this journey across the land to defeat the Dark Lord. There's cool battles, some changes I like, others I don't. So getting into some of those. So some of the changes that I loved and I think I overall prefer. Number one is Gollum, which there's some bits like where Aragorn's talking about his adventure with Gollum and how it's like, dude, this is the worst thing I ever had to do. I hated this little shit. Also, he stinks. Which, that line made me laugh really hard for a while, where it's like, I love how eloquent he is about how much he hates Gollum, followed by, also, he stinks. The dichotomy of it really got me. But Gollum feels a lot more sympathetic in the book. Where in the film, like, yeah, he's going to turn against Frodo and Sam. It's part of that is I know this, but also, yeah, it's obvious. He's just this little gremlin thing, and it's gross. But I like that in the film, there's more time to make him seem sympathetic. So that way, when he does turn against Frodo and Sam, it feels more tragic, and that is something that I really enjoyed. I think Andy Serkis arguably has my favorite performance of anyone throughout the films. Like, I really, really love his take on Gollum. There is a bit from the book that I don't think I brought it up in my list either. Maybe I did. Where it's a bit of prose where Sam is like sleeping on Frodo's lap or vice versa, but like they're just resting, and Gollum sees them. And he sees this moment of companionship and friendship and safety. And for a moment, like, he remembers what he was like. Like, he remembers being Smeagol and not being Gollum. He remembers warmth and love. He kind of starts walking toward them, and I think he's, like, about to put his hand on Frodo. Not because he's going to hurt him, but like kind of trying to have this moment of humanity again. And I think Sam wakes up and is like, what the hell are you doing? Go away. I'm like, Sam, this was the one time that you maybe shouldn't have treated him like that. It's like there is kind of a moment of that in the book, but I think the film, I prefer the way the film handles him. I personally do prefer Saruman. I love rolling the R when I say his name. I have business with Isengard tonight of rock and stone. But Saruman feels far more dignified in the films than he does in the book, and I think a lot of that is just Christopher Lee. Christopher Lee's performance is awesome. But in the book, in the film, he's more Sauron's lackey than I'm doing my own thing. But he also feels far more competent and just less petty and pathetic the way he does in the book. And I think that metaphor of Saruman is the devil and trying to make him seem more petty and he's not actually that strong, I think that does work. But just from the overall perspective of this is the story being told, like this is the wizard who betrayed everybody, I like him being a bit more dignified in the films. Overall, I think I like the pacing of the stories a lot more in the film. And I think a lot of that is like reading Two Towers and half of the book is this, half of the book is this. And I like in the film, it's like, no, here's some stuff with Aragorn, here's some stuff with Merry and Pippin. Now we're also getting some stuff with Frodo. I like the stories being more interwoven in that regard. I also like saving Shelob for Return of the King, just because, man, Frodo and Sam don't have a lot to their story in Return of the King. At least, like, again, their journey before Mount Doom, it's, I think, 3 chapters. So having this stuff with Shelob be there just kind of gives them more to do. I like that more. Boromir's death at the start of Two Towers, I prefer it in the films where it's at the end of Fellowship, and just like the full scene of that I think is great. It's one of my favorites across the trilogy. So overall, I think the pacing is a bit better. Again, there's some things that they added that I don't care for, but we'll get to some of those. I think I like... Oh, sorry. I had Arwen written down, and I thought I meant Éowyn, but I actually meant Arwen there for a second. So some of the scenes with Arwen and Aragorn, I do really like that aren't in the book, which is most of them. That line of, what is it? I'd rather spend one lifetime with you than like 1,000 lifetimes elsewhere. I don't remember exactly how it's phrased. That's great. Absolutely love it. The, Arwen like saving Frodo. Sure, it takes away some of Frodo's badassery, but I don't mind giving Arwen like something to do there. I think that works fine. I think that's one of those like I don't prefer it, but I understand it. But I really like that scene when Aragorn's trying to sneak off and she's like, dude, I'm not going to let you sneak off. We're going to talk first. Yeah, but, I'm saying my goodbye to you because you need to go on a ship. You need to leave. Your people are leaving. I don't want you staying behind for me. Okay. I've made my choice, though. I am staying here, and I will wait for you because I know you're going to succeed. So, like, take my necklace. This is my gift to you. If you want to give it back to me one day, fine. But that means you're making it back. Like, I really like that. I do think I prefer Eowyn a little more in the film, but it kind of goes back and forth in certain aspects. What it really comes down to is Eowyn in the film feels like I'm going on this journey with my people because I want to fight alongside my uncle, my brother, my people. I don't want to be left behind. In the book, it's more of, well, I just met the coolest dude ever in Aragorn, and he's not interested in me. So I kind of just want to die. And it didn't quite work for me, to be honest. I preferred a lot more in the film. Also, something I didn't write down that I prefer is her being there for Theoden's death. Because while she's there for his death, because like she still kills the Witch King with the assist for Merry, that last conversation Theoden has is with Merry, and I do prefer it being with Eowyn. The Battle of Helm's Deep getting more screen time, and it's awesome. I love it. Boromir's death, which I brought up. And I do prefer that moment with Aragorn and Frodo at the end of Fellowship, and Aragorn saying, like, okay, I understand that you have to go. And him having that moment of, like, temptation with the ring and, like, closing Frodo's hand around it. It's not quite the same as if I wanted the ring, I could have it now. But it's still something similar of, I'm going to fight that temptation. And I trust you. We're good. Rather than, where the hell are Frodo and Sam? Which is, it's funny. And it works. It does work in the book, but I think I do prefer that in the film. So getting into the things where I don't prefer it, but I get it. Number one, Theoden is made out to be a far more stubborn character in the films, where Helm's like, I'm going to Helm's Deep not because this is the site of the next battle and we're going to go and we're going to ride, and it's, no, I'm trying to escape and this is a good place to hold up. I'm like, I don't know, and Gondor calls for aid, and Rohan will answer, after giving this whole thing about, like, I don't want to help them, they suck, blah, blah, blah. Because that's not in the book. The Denethor's thing about, no, I don't want help from Rohan, that's not in the book at all. Theoden being against it until he sees the beacon being lit, that's not in there. Until I read the book, that was actually one of my favorite scenes in the film. And that's kind of where I'm at with it, where it's, after reading the book, I see this is kind of pointless, so, nah. But, damn it if I don't love that scene. Although, even rewatching it, I was like, how are some of these beacons getting lit? Like, are there actually people on that snow? Is there a base on that snowy mountain in the middle of nowhere? Isn't that like Cardax? But to my point, Theoden's stubbornness, they weren't there when we needed them. Why should I help? But in the moment where it mattered, he said, I am going to. Because those are still my brothers. Even though we're separated by, all this space and all this time, at the end of the day, we are all men. And the elves showed up to honor an old allegiance, which is kind of its own thing. I don't even remember if I wrote that down. No, I did. I guess we'll get to that in a sec. I'll skip ahead. But, they showed up to honor an old allegiance. I'm going to do the same. So leading into that one, In the books, it does feel more like this is kind of like the last stand of men. So men doing it solo feels a bit more impactful and kind of more important. That's not really how it feels in the book. It just feels like in the films, like there's some shit going on we're trying to hide. Like it's like the last stand for Rohan, but I guess like the stakes in the book feel kind of big. They feel more impactful in like a domino effect kind of way. So it feels more important that the men did it by, like, the men as like a race did it by themselves with, some assist from Gandalf and the Ents at the end, rather than needing the elves. I don't hate the elves showing up, and I think part of that is I like that idea of we're trying to honor our ancient allegiances. Like we're about to leave, but let's kind of make sure that everything is like good before we do. And I like, at least in my head, kind of the impact that ends up having on Theoden when Gondor calls for aid. That's just kind of how I see it, though. I think it works well enough, but I don't prefer it, but I don't hate it. Faramir being tempted by the ring and essentially kind of falling for it when he takes Frodo and Sam to, I believe that's to Osgiliath. That's not in the book. Faramir is someone who is not tempted by the ring in the book. And he even says, like, I kind of have an idea of what you've got on you. Dude, if I saw that thing, I would leave it on the side of a road. I wouldn't take it, even if it could save all of Minas Tirith. Which is a line he says to Denethor in the third movie, where I'm like, that doesn't quite fit with what you did in the last one there, bucko. But here's why I don't hate it. 2 reasons. Number 1, in the book, Faramir kind of intuited eventually that they had the ring, but he never saw it. In the film, he sees it. And I think just that little difference can like kind of up its temptation game is a weird way of phrasing it, but it's what I'm going to go with. It up the ring's temptation game. But number 2, with the way Denethor is written in the film, as he's just kind of always really, really hated Faramir and made sure that Faramir knew it every moment of every day. I can see this version of Faramir being far more desperate to, like, show his worth in his father's eyes. So I don't prefer it, but here I get it. Boromir's falling for the temptation of the ring is just overall less subtle here than it is in the book. I don't hate it, but like it's fine. The Council of Elrond being summoned rather than independently gathered, again, it's not a huge deal. It's something I noticed. Which, okay, again, like these are all the things like I noticed, I don't prefer, I just think they're worth bringing up. I'm just going to try to speed run these then. Yeah, Arwen taking Frodo to Weathertop, that was here, not on top. Treebeard not knowing Saruman is destroying Fanghorn. This is one where it's not just like, I notice, I'm like, I'm torn, because on the one hand, I like that it's used to galvanize the ends of the rock and stone. Like, I love that shit. On the other hand, I'm like, okay, but in the book, Treebeard, like, is Fanghorn. Like, he knows these woods. He knows what Saruman has been doing. It's just more of a, do I care enough to do anything about it? Like, am I really going to get all the Ents to deal with this? And I think I prefer the way it works in the film from just that narrative perspective, but it does diminish Treebeard and like his relationship to his woods. Eowyn and Faramir, they get a scene in the film kind of hinting like their relationship and all of that. In the book, they get a whole chapter, and it's arguably my favorite chapter between all 3 books. I loved it, and that was kind of the epitome of me going, I understand why you cut this. This is already a 12-hour movie. But I don't have to love it, because this is one of my favorite parts of the story. I talked about that. Just the Balrog not being like the pure shadow beast, because I still think it looks sick as hell. There is a bit, though, that they cut, and like I get it because the way it works in the film works really well. But in the book, Gandalf locks a door with magic. It immediately unlocks, and he's like, oh, shit. And they're talking to him like, Gandalf, are you freaking out? And the way he describes it is essentially, there's like 3 things in creation that can undo my spell that quickly. And all of them are bad. We need to be out of here yesterday. And I just loved that. Yeah, they cut out my boy Tommy Bombay. I'm not super upset they cut Tom Bombadil, but I kind of liked him in the book. Like, I get it, but it's fine. There's that scene in Rivendell where Bilbo wants to get the ring of, and he makes that weird face, and I've always thought it was really silly. In the book, it's described as like Frodo wasn't seeing Bilbo anymore. Like Bilbo had transformed into this monster, which is less of a literal thing and more the influence of the ring is that anyone who wants it, Frodo's just seeing as like this greedy creature. And it's portrayed about as well as you can in the movies. It's just in the book it's super cool, and the movie trying to replicate it just kind of made it goofy. But it's fine. Frodo overall, I feel like he's written to just be more vulnerable and more innocent. And I like that portrayal a lot. But there are some moments of intensity that I wish were kept. Like, there's the two lines he has with Gollum. There's one in Two Towers, one in Return of the King. I believe in Two Towers, it's, I'm making you swear on the precious. And if you break that oath, like, you will have to jump in the fire. I don't remember exactly how he phrases it, but it's something like, I could tell you to jump in the fire and you would do it. And then in Return of the King, it's like, if you ever touch me again, I will have you jump in the fire. And what do you know ends up happening? Unfortunately, neither of those were in the film. And I feel like, because there's moments, and I see it in Return of the King and in Two Towers, where Frodo will have that kind of intensity to him, that like protectiveness of the ring. I love Wood's performance overall. I just wish at least one of those had been kept, like especially after Shelob, because I think Gollum attacks him and Frodo like kind of gets him against the wall, and that's where he says, I'm sorry, Smeagol, I have to destroy it for both our sakes, and then Smeagol attacks him again and falls off. I think if Frodo had given one of those lines, they're like, I will put you in the fire if you ever touch me again, and then has that moment of realization of like, what am I saying? I'm sorry, Smeagol, I have to destroy it for both our sakes. And then Smeagol attacks him and falls, and he shows up again in Mount Doom. I think that would have worked a little bit better. Also, there's this whole thing about Aragorn's arc of, I have to let Arwen go, and, the love of my life has gone away, but I just didn't care for it. I get it, because, we're trying to give Aragorn more of an arc, because in the book, he's kind of already had that already. It's like, this is the story of him wanting to take up that mantle of becoming king, and he's doing it for the right reasons, not just so he can marry Arwen, and it gives him, to be a brooding hero with something angsting about. I just think that's fine. Again, it's like, I like a lot of his scenes with Arwen, but I think in Fellowship, I think it works really well. In Two Towers, there's times where it works well, and times where I'm like, guys, this is a 12-hour movie. You could have maybe cut that moment where Aragorn's lying down and Arwen's ghost is staring at him for a few seconds. Which we'll get to that in a bit, because now we get the thing that I just didn't like. So let me talk about my number one thing that I fucking hated from the films. That stupid scene when Sam climbs down the steps, finds the bread, and then goes, gasp, I didn't eat the bread. Gollum's a problem. I gotta go back and help Frodo. Worst thing in all the films. I hate it. I despise it. I loathe it. Here's the thing. Number one, doesn't happen in the book. In the book, they just go to Shelob, they go through the tunnel, and as Frodo was getting spidered, Gollum is fighting Sam, and that's why he's not able to help Frodo from getting stabbed. And that's fine. But, because I actually didn't put this up earlier, but I maybe should have, I really like that bit of Gollum turning Frodo against Sam. Look at the fat hobbits. It's eating all the food. Next, it's greed will make it want the precious. It watches it. It wants it. All that bit, I think is really good. I love the way that they do Gollum. And when they discover that the leavened bread, also, I don't think I brought this up, but leavened bread feels very much like manna from the Bible. There's another Christian influence. But, Sorry, brace up for a second. Sorry. In that moment when they discover the food is missing and Sam's like, where is it? What's going on? Like, I didn't do this. Frodo gives him this look of, it's fine. It's fine. It's not fine. I'm actually kind of mad, Sam, but whatever. It's not until he asks for the ring that Frodo turns on him. So, I think it's important to say Frodo didn't banish Sam because of the food. He banished him because he thought he wanted the ring. And then Frodo walks up the steps, Gollum walks up the steps, and Sam sits there and he's crying because his masters chastised him and banished him. I think that scene is great. I just hate that they have to show Sam climb down, finding the bread that he knows he didn't eat, and go, oh, I have to save Sam from Gollum. All he had to do was just slowly follow behind. Like, yeah, I know I didn't do that. But you know what else I know? You're not safe with that thing. You're not safe with Slinker and Stinker, which he only calls him Stinker, but I think that works. He's like, I know that. So I just followed you from behind. Enough distance that you wouldn't notice and send me off again, but He told me, don't you leave him, Samwise Gamgee. I'm not leaving you. The fact that he actually did leave him, I'm like, this is the most un-Sam Gamgee thing possible. And I hate this scene with a passion. Number 2. So there's a lot of things in this category, like what for number 2, but I have to describe the thing where I got its name. It's the scene with Aragorn and the Palantir, which in the book, I don't think he says a word. He just gets the Palantir, poses with Anduril in front of Sauron, just like, hey bro, what's up? Doesn't say anything, just makes Sauron think, I'm King of Gondor, I've got the sword that cuts you, and I have the ring, and I'm coming for you. Without saying a word. And it's cool as hell, because the plan is, we're going to distract Sauron by making him think I have the ring. And that is hopefully going to give Frodo enough time. It's great. But in the film, he does that, and he has dialogue. I don't think the dialogue's bad. I don't care about that. He's like, oh yeah, you remember this sword? This is the sword that cuts you and shit? It's fine. But then, Sauron on the other line's like, well, your girlfriend's gonna die. It just shows Arwen being sick. And then Aragorn, who in this moment is supposed to be really tough, make him think I have the ring, so I'm a threat. Goes, oh! And then he drops the Palantir, and then his necklace falls and it shatters. And I remember watching that, and I said aloud to Clay, Aragorn just became Oregon. So here's my other Oregon moments that I have. To me, the Palantir killing the mouth of Sauron. Because in the book, the mouth of Sauron says his shit, and then, I don't remember exactly what Aragorn says. It might have been Gandalf that led that conversation. But they basically tell him, go back to your master, go with your tail between your legs, we'll deal with you in a second. And I think that works great. In the film, he kills him. And I watched it, and I felt less of yeah, that's badass. You talk shit to the king, you get your head cut off. It felt more of a, I don't like what you have to say, so I'm gonna silence you. It just felt like this is another moment of someone getting under Aragorn's skin. And it makes him feel weaker to me. There's also that bit in Fellowship where in the book, as they're I don't remember what they're called, but the giant statues of the kings, and Aragorn's looking at them and he's posed, and everyone notes, this dude has a kingly aura about him, and it's awesome. And it just doesn't happen in the book. And like I said, there's more of a focus on this angst of losing Arwen and this complex love relationship that doesn't really need to be that complex, and it just didn't work for me. Gimli, I specifically have this category as Gimli being pure comic relief, because in the book, Gimli, like anyone else, he can still be funny. One of my favorite lines, which isn't even in the films, is when they're in Fanghorn and Treebeard, or it's maybe actually they're in Isengard, and they're talking about maybe going to Fanghorn someday, and then Treebeard looks at Gimli's axe, and he's like, I don't like axes in my woods. To which I believe Gimli says to him, well, this isn't for trees, this is for orc necks. And then Treebeard's just kind of like, okay, I'll let that axe in my woods. Like, I really like that. Like, Gimli can have moments that are funny, that are badass, that are really beautiful. Like, what he says to Galadriel about, like, there's nothing more beautiful than you. The only gift that would be worthy, like, I would not be worthy of it, would just be a lock of your hair, and I would like entomb that and keep it as a family like heirloom. She's like, I like the cut of your jib, I'll give you 3, which apparently is like a reference to something else in like Lord of the Rings lore that's like super cool. But Gimli's love and adoration for Galadriel is a major thing of his character. Like, he almost starts a fight with Éomer because Éomer's like, you came from those woods, like, it's cursed witch. Listen, buddy. Anyone who talks about Galadriel like that has to answer to my axe. You ready to go? Like, I love that. Or like when Gandalf first returns as Gandalf the White, he's like, okay, I was just in Lorien. Here's her message for you, Aragorn. Here's her message for you, Legolas. And then Gimli's like, what an awful day. You know, the Lady of the Woods had nothing for me, her strongest soldier. And then Gandalf's like, oh, my bad, she said I. And Gimli's mood immediately goes from, this is the worst day of my life, to, yeah, boy. Like, I love it. It's great. It's funny. And it, like, gives him something. Like, he's not just the butt of the joke. Most of that is gone here. Like, almost everything related to Galadriel and Gimli is gone. There's the drinking scene where he's literally just burping and farting. There's the scene... Okay, the scene where he, like, falls off his horse is pretty funny. I'll give them that. But then there's that scene in the warg battle where all of these, like, animals and monsters are falling on top of him. And I'm thinking to myself, this is literally how Theoden dies. So I feel like by making a joke out of Gimli here, you're also making fun of the death of a major character that I really like, and I don't appreciate that. This scene is so stupid. There's that scene in Return of the King when they're in, like, the Path of the Dead or whatever it's called, and there's, like, the wisps of smoke, and there's, like, 20 seconds of Gimli going... like, trying to blow away the smoke. And I hated it so much. And I remember talking to Clay about it, like, the next day or the day after. And, like, I brought up that scene. He's like, dude, I could feel how much you hated it. Like, I didn't say a word when that scene was on. He's like, I could feel how much you hated this. It's just, overall, Gimli goes from being a warrior poet to just an oafish warrior, and man, I hate it. The whole warg battle and Aragorn death fake out, I think, is dumb. Like, the battle's fine, aside from everything landing on Gimli, but it's not in the book, and it was a moment where I thought to myself, I'm watching a 12-hour film, and you've added, like, a 15-minute... I don't know how long it actually is. Like, you've added a fight scene that doesn't need to be here, and this Aragorn death fake out that no one is going to buy for a second. And then there's this little bit of angst of, oh no, Aragorn's dead. I'm like, no, he's not, and we all know he's going to be fine. The fact that it's not even a, oh man, like there was this dramatic, like him climbing back up. No, he actually fell and just survived, which, like, I get it, he's Aragorn, but I'm like, that feels less believable than he was able to cut himself loose on time and climb back up. And what did this really get us? There's just a moment where Aragorn's riding back and he sees all these orcs coming. So they prepare, which they kind of already knew was going to happen. It just feels like we added a fight and a death fake out and the angst and all of this for really nothing. And I don't think it's good. Okay, this honestly could have maybe gone higher in the, like, I get it, but I don't think I particularly like the way they do Grima. Because here's the thing, Brad Dourif kills it, and there are moments where he'll deliver a line, I'm like, I hear Chucky in that. I love this. Like, I love the way he's performed. But he's more sympathetic. Because, Theoden turns on him. He's like, King, don't cast me from your side. And Theoden almost cuts him in half, which is great. And, they send him off and he goes to Saruman. But in the book, when he's like, King, don't cast me from your side. And to which Theoden tells him, Grima, I'm not going to cast you from my side. I'm going to war. And as my, number one advisor, I want you there with me. You're a man of Rohan, aren't you? You'll ride with us. We'll give you a horse, and you'll choose which master you ride with. And then he goes to Saruman, and by the time he gets to Isengard, it's already been flooded, and he's just like, what the hell? How? It's so funny. But it's so satisfying because Grima was given a choice, and he chose wrong. Here, Grima isn't given that choice, and I feel like that's important. Also, the way he dies here, because in the book, that's the whole Scouring of the Shire, which I didn't really bring up earlier. I don't mind losing the Scouring of the Shire, because I've always just loved that scene when the hobbits go back, and then everyone is celebrating in the bar, having a gay old time, and the four of them are just sitting there. And there's just that understanding of it's never going to be the same. We're going to do what we can, we're going to try, but our adventure is always going to stick with us, and that is something no one else here will understand. And I think I do prefer that over the Scouring of the Shire, the way the war comes back, personally. But Grima gets killed by the hobbits after they found out that, yeah, he killed and cannibalized a fellow hobbit. Makes sense. In the book, Theoden offers Grima a chance by his side. Grima kills Saruman, their enemy, and then Legolas just decides to shoot him. And even Theoden gives Legolas this look like, why'd you do that? It just, I don't think works. This is very much a minor thing, but the books really emphasize the importance of stealth on this mission. And you kind of get that, when they're all hiding from the birds or the bugs, whatever it was, that, Saruman spies, Sauron spies, blah, 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 blah. But the books really emphasize stealth. That's why we are going with a very short, a small group. That's why we're not going on the main roads. We don't want Sauron to have any idea what we're trying to do. Which is why, in the books, it makes perfect sense to not try to ask the Eagles for a ride to Mordor, because you're going to get found out, and Sauron's going to figure out what you're doing, and he's going to shoot you out of the sky with snipers, because I think Legolas can shoot those things out of the air. I could believe an orc could do that, them being the anti-elves. I can believe that the Nazgul would take you out of the sky, and I can believe that Mount Doom is then going to be fortified. But in the movies, because they don't really discuss that, it does invite so why don't they just try to use the Eagles argument? I still think the same logic applies, but I have to bring that up. And then, of course, the last major thing, it's Denethor. I never really liked Denethor in the film. I just thought he was a gross jerk old guy. And then I read the book, I was like, dude, Denethor's awesome. I really like this dude. You do get that sense of, this is a man who has been trying his hardest for years, and those years of dealing with Sauron directly are really taking their toll. And it's losing Boromir that broke him. It's supposedly losing Faramir that just finishes him off. And it's really interesting to read, and it's really sad to read. And the way he dies is functionally the same, where he has the pyre and he burns to death. But it also notes, he held the Palantir, or it was there with him. And after he burned, unless you had a strong will, anyone who looked into that Palantir would just see Denethor burning. Man, that's cool. In the book, he gets like bonked around by Gandalf, he gets kicked by a horse, catches on fire, and then has that scene where he runs and like burns up, and it's funny and it's silly and it's goofy, and there's the nasty way he eats tomatoes, and would you massacred my boy? Like, what they did to Gimli was bad. Like, Legolas, I get it, that one works. I like Legolas in the book, but I like him in the movie too. It's a different take on the character. Frodo, there's a different take on his character. And while there's bits that I miss, they work. Aragorn, for the most part, I think works well enough. But there's those Oregon moments, man. Gimli! But then there's Denethor and So overall, there's a lot of things that the movies do, like in terms of their differences, that are better, some that are about the same, and definitely things that are worse. I don't know how much I would recommend the back-to-back-to-back binge, because that is functionally a 12-hour movie. You ain't doing anything else that day. But I'm glad I gave it a shot, especially like a week or so after finishing the books while it was all still pretty fresh. It was a good time. I liked it. I still enjoy the films, and part of that is like I enjoy them for what they are, but I still enjoy them as adaptations of Lord of the Rings. There are just some things I wish were different or handled better, but I love the films. I love the books. So glad I finally did this.